Hello, and welcome to the Canadian Story, where we discuss what Canada is, what Canada could be, and what Canada should be.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Welcome back to the Canadian Story. Today, I am joined by Mr. Carlos Medeiros. Carlos, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Zach. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invitation once again. So as you know, I'm Carlos, Portuguese national, abroad, like many of us, unfortunately. I've been traveling a little bit around the globe, so around Europe actually, not around the globe. Mostly on holiday around the globe, but I've been working in the UK for 7 years, and then briefly in Holland, and now in Oslo, where I kind of settled for now, with better weather and weirder people. But here we are.
So you're in Oslo now, yeah?
Yeah.
So what's that like? I've had the fortunate opportunity to do a fair amount of traveling in Europe, but I haven't gotten all the way up to Norway. I've been in Denmark, I've been in Sweden, but I haven't gotten to Oslo. What's Oslo like?
In a nutshell, Oslo is like a big, a big village. I think it's like one of the smallest capitals in Europe. It's very concentrated. They are ahead in a lot of things, and behind, but not in a bad way, in some other ones. Like if you compare Oslo to, for example, like Stockholm or Copenhagen, it's cities that are much more kind of developed in terms of like size, but also infrastructure and like what they're looking for and what they actually harbor. Because, for example, you go to Stockholm, you go to Copenhagen, and obviously this is now in terms of like the food scene, it's much bigger. They have a lot more kind of Michelin star restaurants. So in Copenhagen, you have 2-3 stars, and you have a couple of 2 stars, and you have lots of 1-star restaurants. And then in Oslo, in Stockholm, they have 1 3-star, and then I can't remember if they have a few 2 stars, but they definitely have a lot of 1 stars as well. Oslo has 1 3-star, what I worked before, Miami, and then it has now 4 or 5 1 stars, but that's it. And they have 1 2-star, but it's kind of like in Stavanger, so it's like it's a 1 hour and a half flight, so like 6-hour drive from Oslo to Stavanger, which takes that long because they have ridiculous speed limits here, which is very annoying. Like most roads is like 60 to 80. So traveling within Norway takes a long time. Yeah, it takes a long time. It's very frustrating. Like especially coming from a country where in Portugal, like, the speed limit is 120 kilometers an hour on motorways.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tricky. And also like I'm not in favor of breaking rules, but if you break rules here regarding speed limits, they're much more kind of on the ball rather than in Portugal. Like if you get caught doing 104, you get a little ticket and kind of on your way. Here, if you get caught, the speed limit, the maximum here is 110, and if you get caught doing like 115, like there's a good chance you lose your license. So they're very strict, and they want to bring it down to 100 kilometers per hour now.
Wow,
so yeah, it's very strict.
Interesting. That's so interesting. I was just in Alberta a couple weekends ago where the speed limit on all the highways was 110, and I was doing 130, 135 and just getting blown past, and it was amazing. I was like, this is where I belong. I can't believe that you have to drive that slow though. I'm sorry, man. That's terrible. What are the people like?
Terrible.
Like I haven't ever been up that far in the winter. Your winters must be crazy. Are they super, super cold or what is it like?
It's funny because it's actually colder, but it's more enjoyable. Like, for example, perfect example, last year, not 2022, 2021, it was a minus 10 degrees here in December. And I went home for the first time in many years to spend Christmas. And I remember looking at the forecast, it was like 14 degrees. And I was like, wow, this is going to be like I'm just going to bring like a light jacket, and kind of a couple of sweatshirts and mostly t-shirts. Like, it's going to be great. And I remember got there and I realized that I made the biggest mistake of my life, because when I got there, it was like, even at night, like 10, 12 degrees positive, and it's like it's cold, like because it's strange because even though like Oslo is in the coast in a way, it kind of it's very dry. So like you get, I think there's two things with the weather here. Firstly, it's drier and there's not so much wind. So without the humidity, without the wind, it makes it a lot more bearable. But also like people here are very much on the ball when it comes to like clothing. So Norwegians say that there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing, and it kind
Yeah,
of it goes
nice.
to show like it's like I have this little kind of down jacket which is kind of quite thin, but like it's like probably -6 here now, and I wear this and this jacket, and I'm perfectly fine. Like in Portugal with this, I'd be shaking. But here it's kind of better. And in terms of people, the best way to describe is I always use the same analogy. Is like if you go to a bar and you've forgotten or you lost your wallet or your credit card or whatever, a Norwegian will offer to pay for your beer, but they won't ask you to join their table. So they're very helpful, but they kind of when it comes to including you in their social circle and in their intimacy, they're much more kind of restricted. Like there's not so much warmth. Whereas like in the UK, it's slightly more warm and more inviting, but they're definitely like kind of less helpful. Like if you lose your wallet in the pub, like no one gives a shit. No one's gonna offer to pay a drink. Like here's
Yeah.
different. People tend to help, but there's also this mentality here, like where you shouldn't bother anyone, if that makes sense. So like they have this kind of they're not in comparison to, for example, like people from like Eastern Europe, where I think personally they're actually kind of very emotionally kind of cold and distant. Like people here, they're not emotionally cold or distant. They've got a lot of like feelings and a lot of warmth inside, but they kind of in a way programmed in their mind that they should kind of keep that between themselves. Like if you have a problem and we're friends, like chances are we're not going to talk about problems a lot, if at all, because like you feel like you don't want to burden the next person with like your problems or your issues. So that's very much like kind of the system here. People seem kind of distant, but it's just because they feel like they want to be and they kind of don't want to disturb anyone, and so it can become a bit kind of tricky to make friends in a way. And especially, for example, like in the summer, like everyone's out here. Everyone's like, they actually have summer here, like 2 or 3 months of summer. Like maybe it's not crazy kind of warm, but there is some kind of summer vibe. But then in the winter, they all kind of seclude back to their houses. So like if you have like friends and stuff, like if you go to a restaurant, then you go home together and like have a party at someone's house. Like they do things a lot in their own houses and their own little circles of friends. Like there isn't like it's like you have one circle here, one circle there, one circle there. It's like you've got one circle of friends, and that's the people that you hang with most of the time.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that's how they roll. So that's why it's hard for some people to make friends. Yeah.
That sounds nice. I'm fairly introverted. It sounds like a good pace to live life.
Yeah.
So you're a chef, born in Portugal. What made you decide to leave Portugal?
Many things actually. I think I am very much Portuguese at heart, and I'm very patriotic when it comes to my country. And like I don't know, like if there was maybe this is something silly to say, but like if there was a war tomorrow, I'd be on the first plane home, to enlist and to defend my country. But like I kind of grown apart from the society of my country in a little bit, I think, because we have this kind of mentality of we're always complaining. Nothing's ever good, but we're not necessarily doing anything to change that. And at the same time, we're not thinking about the next person. Like, and this is actually kind of the polar opposite here. Like, this is very much like a socialist state, where like it's very much about the welfare of the country and the community. Like, you don't see a lot of arguments, a lot of fights. Like, I think I've seen one or two like brawls in bars or like clubs since I've been here. It's like going to 2 years now in August. So it kind of people are much more kind of chilled and respectful of each other here, and they also kind of they all want to do their part. Like they all want to pay the taxes. Like they all want to kind of make sure they're doing the part for society because they understand that that's how it works. Like, and we're the opposite in Portugal. Like with such a vicious circle. That's like, that Portugal is in deficit, that the economy is bad, and that you have a lot of like corruption within politics, but like no one's kind of doing anything to change that. No one's willing to take that kind of bullet and being okay and being a martyr, or like or just kind of doing something for the collective because they're like, oh yeah, no one else is doing it, so I'm not going to do it. And because they have the mentality, it's then very, very hard also to break that, And I've never been aligned with that mentality in any shape or form. So I was like, I don't want to be in a country where everyone's very negative about everything all the time. Where everyone's negative all the time. Everything that's foreign is better. Like, we don't have a sense of pride in what we have. We have amazing produce. We have amazing like basic things like fruits and vegetables that actually taste delicious. We have an amazing culture. We have amazing architecture. We have an amazing hospitality and fostering for people that come into our country. But we don't appreciate that internally, I think. And then that just kind of spirals into a bigger problem, which is then who you know. And Portugal is not who you are, but who you know. Like, for example, if you and I went to school together, and I went and worked at a 3-star restaurant, for example, and you worked in a 1-star restaurant, and just giving a comparison, like, there's obviously a kind of a shift in what you learn and what you get and what you see in 3-star and 1-star, for example. And if we go for a job offer and we're the same age, but someone that's the cousin of the sister of whatever inside the company, chances are you're going to get the job and I don't, even though I'll be more qualified than you or vice versa. So it's kind of, that's something I really always kind of fought against, I think we all worth something and we all kind of should get what we work for, what we fight for, and not what we kind of get because of who we know, even though sometimes there's like imbalance and things. And that's why I kind of got left now. I was just sick of it in a way. I just wanted to try something different. And then I moved to the UK. And the plan was actually to go to Australia. I thought I'm just going to go to the UK. It's like 12 flights. I've shit to the fan. I'll just, hop back on the plane and, I'm just going to try and fend for myself for like a year and see how it goes. And then I ended up staying there for 7 years. I met a girl and then stay there for 7 years, and life goes on. And then I moved briefly to Holland and now to Oslo.
Yeah.
And I don't plan on going back anytime soon.
Going back to Portugal or to the UK?
To Portugal.
Yeah.
The UK I'll consider at some point, but not Portugal.
Yeah. I would struggle with the idea that, it's not who you are, it's who you know. That would bug me. I very much believe that people should qualify for positions entirely based on merit. I don't really think that there should be any other factor. If you are the one who is deserving of the position, that should be your position. It should be as simple as that. Because I think that's good for the individual, and I think that's good for the society too. What is the sentiment in Norway of the people toward the government? You described it as a fairly socialist state. Do you find people feel controlled, or are they happy to be taxed high and happy to what is the opinion of the government in Norway?
Well, first let me say I think no one's happy being taxed high, but I think everyone understands that it's part of a system. Like I understand that again, a big difference from Norway to Portugal. I understand that if a kilo of carrots here costs €3, or 30 kronas, like they have here, they have the Norwegian krona, but that gives the farmer that grows it a kind of a chance at living and having a normal life and having buying his Mercedes or his BMW in 10-15 years of running his farm. and actually getting back something from what he does and what his passion, then I think it's something that I can wholeheartedly live with, and I'll happily pay that price. In Portugal, like kind of everyone wants the cheapest possible, but it's like you got farmers in Portugal that I kind of barely live on, and you look at them and like you see them and they're like wearing like almost rags sometimes, and there are people that are giving you lots of what's to say, like a lot of good things in life, like basics, like vegetables and all other stuff. So they're nurturing basically your health, and the way that we repay them back home is by taking the most of them and giving them the least. So I think here people understand that. They understand that you deserve to have a good life, just as the farmer that grows carrots for you, just as the guy that cleans the toilets in the pub that you go to. And I think that is the mentality that changes things here for me. Towards the government, I think everyone's there always see people that complain about the government and stuff, but I think everyone's fairly happy with the governments, and they have these things where they're not in any shape or form transparent. It's funny because my girlfriend now is Norwegian, and she constantly tells me that, because she works in politics as well, and she tells me like, oh yeah, politicians here do this and do that, like whatever. I'm like, your politicians here are like 3 or 4 levels above any other country I've been to or lived, and I think you guys don't appreciate it, because for you it's like normal. But like, for example, in Portugal, there's cases of like politicians that kind of openly steal or take I don't know, like a leverage on certain things within their position. Same as in the UK, which is crazy thinking about it, the country that it is. But here, like, I remember there was a case of this politician that 20 years ago, he was with a girl much younger than him, but still kind of legal in all terms. I think she was 19 and he was like 40 something. And a newspaper found out about that 20 years after, and then he basically, when they came out, they just kind of quit the job. Said hadabara, like they say here, like means goodbye, and like kind of handed his paper resignation, and kind of like, so they're very much like, they want to be transparent, and like, in Portugal that wouldn't even thought about. In the UK that would just like slide by like no one's business. We have cases of pedophilia in Portugal, and like things take a lot to just be pulled out, and you always end up finding a weak link. And I remember there's a case of like a ring of pedophilia back in the day, in like early 2000, that came out, and there were some politicians involved. Obviously, the guys who got the big kind of the big nail in the cross were the guys that the lowest in the circle. Like they weren't a doctor or it wasn't a politician. So like here, like something like that would never happen. It's kind of, everything is much more clear and transparent. So I think the sentiment here, to answer your question, the sentiment here towards the government is like, I would say favorable. I mean, I've been here for 2 years, but I would say it's very much favorable. Like, people kind of understand. When we had COVID, they were just kind of told, okay, stay in the house and do this, and people just did it. They understood that they were doing it for the better, and like, no one thinks that the government here is like got like a scheme behind things, or like they're kind of trying to do this or that and the other. So it's very kind of reassuring to know that there's great deal of trust.
I can't even imagine transparency in politics. I don't feel like we experience that here in Canada. Let's talk food though, man. So did you start cooking in Portugal? Probably, right?
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, I'm sorry to report one like this kind of a big cliche story of like a guy that grew up, cooking with his grandma, and then involved his passion into cooking. That was really my thing. It's actually kind of almost like casuality. I remember I was in school, like just finished high school, going into college, which is like the last kind of 3 years that we do back home. I don't know how it works in Canada. And normally you sign up for the next year before you leave, for holidays. But normally, most times, like, it's okay if you do it kind of, when you come back from holiday, which is like 3 months or 2 months back in Portugal. I don't know how it is now, but it was 3 months. But normally most people do it before, just kind of, we just get it done. My mom decided that she wanted to leave for holiday as soon as possible. So we left, and then we came back. There was like a big boom of like people wanting to join my school, the school I was in. So when I came back, I hadn't have a place in my year, another within the class that I had before. So then they give me the choices. You can either go to mechanics or to like IT. And my dad is an IT guy. I'm not so much into mechanics. I now love motorbikes, but I'm not so much into mechanics, especially of cars. And, I kind of resigned myself to the idea that I probably have to do IT, which is something that I really, really didn't want to, but I feel like, okay, maybe somehow I have to. And then before that, like, I've been kind of watching lots of Jamie Oliver back in the day, and I remember there's a fair amount of times where I'd stay up sometimes all night. Like, I started doing pasta and raviolis, and sometimes like my mom would wake up at 7 in the morning. The first thing I'd give it to her, I was like, try this risotto, try this ravioli. I've been doing it all night,
Yeah.
I got to a point where she was so sick of eating raviolis and risotto that she didn't eat it for like 2 years. She refused flat out to eat because she had it so often. And then I had I don't know why, I don't know actually where they came from, but like I went to sign up to like a cooking college, and they told me like, we fully booked, like no space for you this year. We're really sorry, but like we put you on the waiting list. And there's like 4 people in front of you if there's a gap. So if 4 people kind of quit, which is unlikely, but then we'll get you in. And then I was kind of, I remember I went back home because we had to wake up very early from where we were to drive to the school for the interview in the morning. And I just kind of came back, and I was like crying in the car because I was like, fuck, like what I'm going to do with my life now? I don't want to go to IT. Like, this is like, I'm just a kid, like 16, 15 years old, like not knowing what to do with life. And I felt like, I'm going through something that I don't like. So I'm really kind of scared about it. And then, things get going, and it gets September, and I get ready to kind of go back to, to my original school, like in my IT course. And suddenly they call me, and like, we've got a vacancy, and we really, really liked you. And I think we're going to bump you up in the list, and if you want the spot, then it's yours. And then the rest is history. I cooked there for 3 years, and then I worked in Portugal for about 2 or 3 more years, and then I moved to the UK.
Crazy. What is school like? Like what kind of things do you learn?
I think school, to be very honest, is kind of shit. And this is just me being plain honest, but I think school in general is shit. Like you don't get taught how to live anymore. I feel like, I don't know how it is in Canada, but in Portugal, I feel like, and I think this is similar to a lot of countries in Europe, like you just kind of pushed through an agenda of like what you need to learn, like what you need to do, like how you need to act, and I think there is no kind of individuality in school. No one actually kind of wants to teach you what you should learn. Like, I can tell you that 80% of the things I've learned in school, I haven't used them outside of school. Like, they're useless to me. What I really want to learn in school, which is how to relate with people, how to navigate problems, how to navigate the law of my profession, and what I'm entitled to, and what's expected of me, and how to what's expected of me in society, and how to act, and how to deal with things that we get dealt with every day, like how to build like a fucking credit score. I've learned about credit scores and credit cards about like 5 years ago, and I think everyone should know that before they finish school. Everyone should know that getting a credit card is good for you. It's great. It's one of the best things that you can do, but like not for spending it. Like, I have a credit card, then I basically do all my expenses on my credit card, and then come the end of the month, before my statement comes in, I pay my credit card in full. And then that just gives me a good credit rating every day. That's accumulating, every month, and that means that in 5 years' time, if I want to buy a house, then I have a good credit rating, and I'm actually kind of in a place where I can then have more choice rather than stuck in a place where, okay, I've got a bad credit rating because I've known nothing about it. No one's ever taught me about it. And I have now to be stuck with the choice of buying a house in a place that I don't want for a price that I'm not willing to pay, or I think overpaying, or just kind of rent for the rest of my life. And I think it's something that's very, very stupid with our school system, you know. So I don't feel like I've learned a lot in school. I've learned like basic recipes in cooking. I've learned, you know, what is, and they didn't even tell me what good quality lifestyle. You know, I remember back in school, like there's this brand of knives that's very famous, but worldwide, the Japanese, they're called Global. They're the first kind of big thing that came out of like Japan, I think, for most chefs before they realized what they actually were. And I remember like there was one of the guys who had like a set of Globals, and everyone wanted Global knives, you know. And now after 12 years in the kitchen, like I would never touch a Global knife. And in fact, I will outright tell any chefs that I work with, like if they have Globals, I'm like, what are you doing with your life? You know, like this is not a chef's knife. Like
what's wrong with them?
They're just shit quality. Like the steel is not good. It gets dull. It's very thick. Like it's weird. It's like when you drive a Ford all the time, it's great. You know, it does the job. But when you've driven, like, I'm not even talking about Ferrari because I think Ferrari is kind of out of context. But when you drive like a proper Mercedes, you know, a car that works and performs, and you drive it, then you understand why Ford is not a great car. You know, but you have to drive a Mercedes. And I think if the guys at school, my teachers, kind of knew that, then they would have given me a different kind of schooling, but they didn't, you know. So I feel like a lot of things I've learned in school are completely useless to me. I think a lot of people struggle with that, apart from like maybe like lawyers and doctors, things that are very kind of established in terms of like you know, you go there to learn medicine, how arteries work, and how your heart pumps blood. But I think other than that, it's very kind of very pointless, you know. And yeah, I think it's evident because you see a lot of like self-made millionaires and entrepreneurs, like most of them they just school at like 15, 16. So I think it's a big evidence that school actually, in a lot of ways, at this time and age, pointless in a lot of countries.
Yeah, at least, I mean, not like you said, not all programs, but quite a lot of programs are useless. Do you run into, so you were, I think you said this, but do you work at a 3-star restaurant?
Yeah, I worked not any long, but I used to work at Miami.
Okay. Do you run into people in that environment? Because that is, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not in this world, but that 3 stars is the pinnacle. It is the top of the game, right?
Yeah.
Do you run into people working in those restaurants who haven't been to school? Or is it like a prerequisite to get into the club, you know?
No. I to be very honest, I can't say for sure, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't surprise me. I think, you know, I thought, for example, back in the day that working in a 3-star meant that you need to like have certain qualifications, certain levels, and this and the other. And I think more than ever now it's evident that you don't need to. Like I've worked with chefs that are brilliant, you know, and have less education than some guys that have been to school and, you know, born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and they're absolutely shit. You know, they're garbage. Like they don't know how to work. They don't know, because I think there's a lot. I think for me, there's 2 things that are very important in at least in my job, which is hunger, you know, the drive, but also experience, you know. And I think nothing trumps that. Nothing trumps experience. It's something that I've learned with time. Like it doesn't matter, like how many chefs I work with. It all comes down to experience, not only experience in the job, but experience in life. Like I feel like I've matured a lot in my job in the past 3 or 4 years, and I think that comes down to me maturing as well, like internally and personally as a human being. So I think no, it wouldn't be uncommon for me, or it wouldn't be surprising for me if I met someone that kind of is skipped school in a 3-star restaurant. I think there's a lot of like chefs that skipped school for sure. There's a very famous guy. He was Spanish, and he was a car salesman until he was like 40 something, and then he decided, he was really in love with cooking, and then he left this job and started working in restaurants, and he opened his own restaurant. I think he got 1 or 2 stars, and then he died tragically. But it just goes to show that kitchen is a place where it's down to like experience and merit, like how bad you want it. Like you gotta want it bad. Like I mean, it's a lot of people ask me like, how is it working in the kitchen? Like, how's your job? And so my job is not a job; it's a lifestyle. I think that's the difference between our profession and a lot of professions, where you kind of, if you want to achieve great things, but I think it's with everything, but especially in the kitchen, if you want to achieve great things, you have to be obsessed. And if you're obsessed, like, you'll never have life balance. That's something that a lot of people like love to babble about these days, or like, oh, life balance and like all that. For me, that's garbage. Like, I mean, a lot of people want that, and I understand. Like that's fine, and a lot of people want to be average. Let them be average, and I think it's perfectly fine and acceptable. But if you really want to get to the top of what you want to do and where you want to be, then like there is no life balance. Like there is no kind of easy life. There is no 8-hour day. There's no 9 to 5, and I think that translates into why our job, it's a lot down to how bad you want it and what you want to do for it, rather than what your qualifications are.
How many hours a week do you think you work?
Right now, I don't know, it's hard because I define working hours when I'm at my job. But so working hours at my job, I would say between I don't know, 65, 70 hours a week. But outside of work, which is also, a lot of people also consider work, but I don't, because I'm not at work physically. Like studying things, like reading, like things that are important to my job, like coming up with ideas, like going to meet farmers or talk to people in my job, then you're probably looking at 90 hours a week.
90 hours a week. That's a lot. That's impressive. Do you source a lot of the ingredients that you cook with locally?
Yes, we actively try to source as much as we can, as locally as possible. And we actually have a great platform here in Norway, which is called Dagens. And basically, it's a platform where if you're a farmer or you raise poultry or like cattle, whatever, you go in there and you kind of set up your own online shop, and then with the products that you sell, and then you have like a schedule of like things that come into season when they come into season, and then we can, as chefs, we can just go and order directly from them, and then also kind of get that connection. So like I've met a few farmers through this platform, and I've visited a few of them as well. And it's great because you have like that direct contact with the farmers, and like it comes to a case, for example, like now it's coming into like pea season here, and I've fell in love with peas Norway in Miami, because we used to have a dish with these most amazing peas, which was grown by a lady, that just grown peas like as a hobby kind of, and they were delicious, like the best peas I've tasted in my life. They're tiny but like super like sweet and succulent. They were delicious. And so now I'm talking to a farmer to grow a specific breed of a specific type of peas for us to have in our menu. So like I think we try actively to source as much as we can local, but it's also a network that takes time to build upon. And unfortunately, I'm working in a place now which is much smaller and much less known than, for example, Miami, where it's easy because people naturally want to work with you, so they come to you. Like I remember we had one of the dishes that we have is a potato lompa, and basically it kind of, there was a farmer that used to kind of come into Miami to deliver him, and he used to drive like 6 hours to drive the potatoes, to Miami, and this was like 20 or 40 kilos a week. Like it wasn't a lot, and he was like super proud of coming and living to Miami. So it just goes to show like the power of connection that you can make with people, and how you can actually make a great place, and not just satisfy and connect the people that you're serving, but also the people that are serving you. In this case, like growers of potatoes, like dairy farmers, like people that grow pigs. Like it's a it's a it's a industry where you're able to touch a lot of people, and leave a great impact in them if you so wish to do.
I love that. I love that whole idea, and it's a cool way. Like farmers are so connected to the land, but as a chef, being connected to a farmer and connected to ingredients also kind of connects you back into the land and the world that you live in, that is surrounding you. And I really like the idea of that. A couple of minutes ago, though, you said you really kind of matured over the last few years, both in your personal life and in your job. And you matured maybe in your job because of the maturity that you experienced in your personal life. Was there like a catalyst or a thing that sparked that maturity? Like, what was the thing that sparked that change in you?
I think actually in lots of ways, COVID did, which is, it might be a bit cliche. I think a lot of people are going through that same stage now. But I remember I was very much, and don't get me wrong, I still am very much addicted to work. But I was in a place. I remember the first 2 weeks of COVID, I was home and I was literally like banging my head on walls, and I was like going like bananas. Like I didn't know what to do. I couldn't function outside of work. Like I felt like utterly like useless and out of place. And I remember I had a wonderful housemate, which is a very, very dear friend of mine now. Her name is Georgina. And she kind of told me at one point that, I needed to be happy being alone with myself. And it's very important to be like alone myself. And at the time, I remember I was reading kind of like books about the like different like SAS guys, and because I'm very much into like military. I think if I wasn't like working in the kitchen, like my dream was always to be in the army. Like that was actually my dream since I was a kid. I always wanted to join the army, and there's actually why I joined when I went to the UK in the first place, because I wanted to join. I wanted to join the I wanted to join the Special Air Service in the SAS in the UK. And I thought, okay, I do 5 years there, and then I can get my nationality, and then I can enlist. And then I just kind of end up like getting sucked into cooking, and kind of that kind of went out the window. But she told me that, we were talking about this, and she was looking at the books I was reading, and she was like, you have to be strong mentally, but to be strong mentally, you have to like be comfortable being on your own. And I think that's what clicked. And when I realized that suddenly, like, I was living a very hectic lifestyle, like always jumping from one place to the other. I was working from, at one of the best points of my life, which was great. But looking back, it was hectic. I was working in a very good catering company, and I was making a good amount of money. And at the same time, I kind of really got into jiu-jitsu, which is also a big part of my life. And I was, finish starting at 8 in the morning or 7:45, so we can have at 7. Driving to work, and I used to do everything whilst I used to drive to work. I used to have breakfast, brush my teeth, and answer my emails and do memos and stuff all in the car. That's when I learned
driving to
the
work.
magic of I used to have like a 40-minute drive to work, and I used to that's when I learned the magic of Siri. So I used to like do everything hands free. When I brushing my teeth, like bottle of water, chugging it, spitting out the car, like having my breakfast, and then like talking to Siri, like answering emails I had to answer, like planning my day and whatever, and then finish work at like 5:30 or 6, and then driving straight back to Reigate, where I was living, to train jiu-jitsu. Now I do like 1 or 2 classes, so that would be anywhere between 2 to like 3 or 4 hours of jiu-jitsu. And then go from there to the gym to lift, and do my strength and conditioning.
Whoa.
And then I would come home at like 10:30, 11 sometimes, And I used to I always train in a very small gym, so it's kind of like it was like a tiny gym. It's called Performance Elites, and I've got a lot of fond memories from it. And I remember I used to go there train at like 9:30, sometimes 10 o'clock at night when it was kind of locked up. So I had to go now, kind of like sneak in and whatever. And I had to sneak in because I couldn't be there because like my insurance policy, like there couldn't be no one there after 10 o'clock, whatever. So I used to have to sneak in and kind of sneak out. And it was just my own day, just me like doing my exercise, my lifting, and like my cardio at 10:30 at night when everyone's home sleeping. I was like there grinding, and then going back home, cooking some food, like a huge plate of food, and then gobbing it all down before going to bed and then staying up the next day. And I would just kind of I would go out twice a month, and I go down to Brighton where most of my friends would be, and I would kind of just have a really kind of crazy night, until like 6, 7, 8 in the morning, enjoying time with my pals, and I was just kind of constantly like doing something, like I would rarely be home. Like if I was home, it would be to watch some TV, like, or kind of to like shut off my brain a little bit. And then I would never spend the whole day at home. I'd always be doing something. If I wasn't training, I'd be, working. If I wasn't working, I'd be like, doing some kind of workout, or like going to meet someone, or going to drink, or like just going for a walk around in town. And I realized afterwards that this was because I had this kind of lot of noise inside my head that I was trying to quieten down. I had a lot of demons that I didn't kind of wanted to face. So that kind of constantly pushing them down with this huge load of like, social or professional or like fitness related activities. And that's when I had to kind of really step down and like I wasn't training, gyms were closed, there wasn't much social interaction going on, and all my housemates they had jobs that were like essential. So like one of them was in health industry, the other one was like in construction industry. So like they very much had their jobs as usual. And I was the only one kind of stuck home most of the times, and that's when it dawned on me that I had a lot of things that I had to fix inside my head. And then I think that's when it kind of that flip kind of switched, and I kind of changed the ways I think, and by default starting maturing in that sense.
What was doing that personal growth work like?
Say that again.
What was doing that personal growth work like? So you slow down, you discover you have all of these demons. Now the question becomes, okay, well, what the hell do I do with these? Like, I didn't know these were here. How did you go on that journey of like, okay, these are some things I need to deal with. Now I'm going to go deal with them. What was that like?
It was extremely painful, and I've tried avoiding it as much as I could, and then they got to a point where I was like, I had nothing else to do, and like these demons were still there. And I think when you're in silence, you suddenly notice the noise, if that makes sense. Like when I was on my own and there was no one home, like even with music, I was in silence, if that makes sense. It sounded a bit awkward, but I was in silence in my head, and then I kind of realized, okay, these are things that I need to deal with because they're actually like starting to drag me and not letting me move forward. So it was a lot of reading, a lot of planning, a lot of like understanding what kind of made me tick and what things triggered me. A lot of healing, a lot of kind of realizing that I was punishing myself for a lot of things that I shouldn't be, and I was feeling ashamed by a lot of things that I shouldn't be in the first place. And it was incredibly painful. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think this is something that is to be expected. The longer you delay a problem, the harder it will be to deal with at the end. So it involved a lot of mental work, but also realizing a lot of things that I kind of had no clue I was so like behind with. Like I was fortunate I had really, really great like housemates. I lived in a house of 3 people. One of them was completely nuts, and the other 2 were nuts, but they were great nuts. One of them was Georgina, who works in construction. The other one was Lorinus, a kind of IT guy, a bit of a conspiracy theorist, but very, very, very intelligent guy. just to give you an idea, like, I don't know if you know anything about like cryptos back in the day, but like there's this thing called Cardano, which is like a very interesting platform and currency. And he kind of got the drop on it before a lot of people realized. And he basically went from working a very good IT job with a decent salary and like a very good kind of lifestyle to quitting his job and kind of like not retiring, but like choosing to do what he wants to do, which is like crypto, like buying and selling crypto and doing things online. And like this is a guy that's, and like he maybe wasn't the most socially kind of apt person, but he's, and everything else, like he was actually the guy that showed me, okay, like this is where you need to get a credit card. This is how the things need to work. This is what you need to do. Like this is how the system works. He wasn't like a guy that kind of is towards the system, but I think he kind of resonated a lot with me because I am very much like him in the sense that I'm not in agreement with a lot of that the world works, but I understand that that's how the world works, and I'm one drop in the ocean. Like I won't be able to change it. Yeah. So I can either kind of be like one of my sisters who is very much like life is very unfair, and like this is not so good, and like I don't want to this, and people shouldn't be like that. But I can go, okay, this is the world. Sometimes it's beautiful, sometimes it sucks, sometimes it's really shit, sometimes it's like raining, sometimes it's sunny. But like this doesn't change. Like me not accepting it and fighting against it is not going to change it. So I need to kind of understand the systems, go with the flow, and take the most out of what I can of every situation, And like that's when he told me about credit cards, about how for example, like there's one thing very interesting that's rich debt and taxes or make rich people rich and poor people poor, and that's when I started looking into it a lot. For example, you look at Donald Trump. I think in 2019 or 2018, he paid in tax, I think was something like £683 in tax. And everyone's like, wow, it's outrageous. Like how this guy with so much money like pays no tax. The thing is, he's done it legally. He understands the system. He understands that if you have $1 million in the bank that's yours to use, but you choose not to use that money, and then you run an empire that's based on a loan or a credit of $1 million, then suddenly your net worth is zero, because even though you have money, you owe money somewhere else. So like you physically pay taxes on things that you have extra. So like if you have a lot of assets, but none of the assets are legally kind of in your pockets, then you don't own them. Like you own them, but you don't own them. It's kind of like a tricky situation. And that's when I kind of realized, okay, this is how life needs to work. Like this is what I need to do. Like, if I want to have certain things in life, I need to understand the system, how it works. I had to do my research and do my, my studying, and then kind of I just take advantage of the system, because that's what everyone with half a brain that has some money and some knowledge does. And so it's up to us. The knowledge is there. It's more freely available than ever now with the internet and all these things. It's just up to us to reach out and take it.
Yeah, people love to bitch about the system, but the system's there. And you're right, drop in the ocean, man. You are not going to single-handedly muscle your way out of the system or make a change for you. There is a way things go. There's a way things work. There's rules. There's a way you can play the game. And that might make people sad or upset or frustrated. It might come off as unfair. And in a lot of ways it is, but it is also just the way it is. And if you can learn to engage with the system and win at the system, and then the kind of antidote in my brain to that is if you can do the system thing, but then when you're not at work, exit that into your life and be good to the people around you. That's what your experience actually is. So you engage with the system that's unfair, you win at it, and then you step out of that and you love the people around you. And I think you can build a beautiful and good life that way,
Yeah, agreed. But it's like you say, like you have to have that knowledge and that acceptance, most of all, that you are just a drop in the ocean. Like you can't muscle your way out into society, because it is where it is. Like as much as I hate to have politics run the way that they do, like there's nothing I can do against it at this moment in time on my own. Maybe I could join a group and then start to gather a following and have enough followers to kind of have a meaningful number to make a difference. But like that's also work, and a lot of people are not willing to do that work. I'm not willing to do that work, but I understand that, and I understand that if I'm not willing to do that work and do that change, then I have to do something else if I want to live life my own terms, and that's understanding in this case, in my case, how the system works, or partially how part of it works, and kind of like going with it. It's like if you can't beat them, join them. And I think it's very much like the system that we have in place right now. In an ideal world, like things would be kind of fairer, but I mean, at the end of the day, how can things be fair and perfect for everyone when we're so different? There's not one person that's the same as the next, so like it will never work. Basically, it will never exist. I think it's just there will just be those people that kind of complain and resign to the life they have, and there's those who want better and then change. So
yeah.
Unfortunately, I think that's what it is.
It's never going to be fair, so don't let that be the reason that you don't try.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we are unfortunately just about out of time here, man. It's been a real pleasure getting to know you. Thanks for coming on the show and talking about your life and sharing your story with us. I really appreciate it. And I don't know if I'll ever get to Norway anytime soon, but what for anyone who is listening who might be from the area, what is the name of the restaurant you work at in case people want to check it out?
It's actually called Baramur.
Okay, sweet. You'll have to send me like a website link, and I can link it in the show notes. And then if anyone's around,
it's called,
definitely go check it out.
It's called Baramur, like as in love in French. But it's it's very hidden away. It's strange because like it's inside a pizzeria, and then you kind of walk in up the stairs, and then there's like this kind of little kind of really closed out space in the middle of nowhere with this kind of wallpaper. This used to be like actually a whorehouse back in the day. And that's actually where the name comes from. Yeah, Baramur.
That's funny. What kind of food do you serve there?
We are serving what I like to call a Portuguese approach on Nordic produce. So we have lots of influence from the Portuguese culture, not just necessarily Portuguese techniques or food culture, but like culture itself. And then with Norwegian produce, like we barely import anything outside of Norway, and that's the idea, to do Portuguese inspired food with Norwegian produce and having that symbiosis, because we have like just very, very quickly, we have like a very big connection with Norway that a lot of people don't kind of understand or even know about. But like Portugal's national kind of dish is bacalhau, which is basically like dried cod, and we are the biggest importer of bacalhau, and Norway is the biggest exporter of bacalhau, and we have been for years. So we share this kind of bond, for years that no one actually kind of really understands. And so it's kind of about bringing those cultures. For me, it's about bringing those two cultures kind of together, that we share one thing in common, but we should share more, because in a way, like, our national dish is this country's second biggest export. It's salmon and codfish. So
cool.
And then oil.
Cool. That's awesome. All right, man. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, and I hope we get to do it again. My
pleasure. Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation once again, and hopefully you'll speak soon.
Thank you for listening to The Canadian Story. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at The CAD Story. That's The CAD Story. If you enjoy this podcast, please share it with your friends and family. Let's work together to remind Canadians how great their country is.